Welcome back to Destroying Walls. Obviously, there is something different. You're actually seeing our faces. I wonder if some of them didn't know what we look like. This is what we look
Yeah,
like.
and
Uh,
and we're at home too.
and we're at home because we
Also
can't be
very
close to each
different.
other.
Yeah.
You're in your house and I'm in my backyard. We're really excited because it's going to start off our segments. We're going to be actually video interviewing people, maybe from the United States, some from Canada. So that's really exciting. I want to know, how have you been doing, Dylan Clarke, during this pandemic? Because we haven't seen each
I've
other
been
like for a while.
yeah, it's been since March. It's been crazy. We've talked a bit, but not in person. But yeah, I for the first little bit, I was doing some schooling, doing some skip the dishes to fill some time. And then over the last month and a half or so, I've been working on an internship so I can get that degree next year. So it's been
So you
going
can get
really
the
good for
degree.
me. A very productive summer as a whole.
I remember the last time we saw each other in school, it felt like the world's gonna end. Like I was just like, because everyone was freaking out and like the professors were like,
Yeah.
"Don't touch anything," blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, okay, I just had a feeling that we weren't gonna see. Like I remember Robert was passing by. I was like, probably see you like next year, and we might actually not even see each other until winter. And you even
I
told me
know.
we might not come back to winter, which I'm like, please no.
I mean, with the rise in cases that we're seeing right now, and we'll talk about that more later, but there's no guarantee we'll be back in the winter. There really isn't.
Yeah.
I hope so, though. I hope we're back in the winter because school from home is just not the same. It's not the same as being there.
No, not at all. Actually, I did a spring course, which wasn't that bad, but I
Yeah.
will say that I feel like I'm teaching myself a little bit more, and that's a bit stressful. But like, honestly, I'd rather that than actually have coronavirus. And I do understand that coming back, but like, Jason Kenney right now said that he might want to bring back the children to elementary and the little schools. How do you feel about that, Dill?
As long as it's done safely and you force them to wear masks, which isn't going to be part of it, so I don't agree with it. And also, you have to put them in a situation where they can socially distance as much as possible. But I doubt they're going to force them to wear masks, and I doubt they're going to take as strong of measures as they should. So, depending on the measures they take, I'm against it.
I saw this person saying, teachers could get a lot of money right now if they wanted. They could do like 10 people. They could like bring like 10 students to their house, like and all like social distance, and like teach them like just the 10 group, and like make them
Yeah,
pay like each, I don't know, how much, because like childcare is really expensive, and that's been a real big issue in like politics as well. But like now the teachers can bring them to the house, like also take care of them, but also teach them, because a lot of parents right now are struggling because they have to work as well still, but they also have to take care of their kids because their kids can't go to daycare and school. So that's been a real big issue. But like if teachers start doing that, they could actually get paid more than they do like
it's true.
teaching at
Oh,
school
they
and real
would.
schools,
Yeah.
which seems like a big of an issue for me because honestly, my dad was talking about CERB, which, if you don't know, we live in Canada. So now, if you're affected by coronavirus, you can get some money depending on if you weren't supposed to get a job, but you can't anymore. Um, there were certain people that were supposed to be hired, but they were saying, oh, we get paid more by getting CERB than like if we were to work. So people are opting for CERB instead of actually working, which I was like, a lot of people are being like, that's why we shouldn't do CERB, blah, blah, blah. But to me, that just highlights the problem of, well, then why aren't they getting paid better then? If like 2000 is like what people are getting, because that's how much we need to pay to live, like rent, food, and other things, then I
Yeah.
feel like that's what people should be being paid in general. And it wouldn't, like, if we were paying our workers well, it wouldn't have discouraged them to start working again instead of taking CERB.
Yeah. If they're working full time, they will get more than that. But a lot of the jobs people were getting were not quite full time. And in those cases, it's better off to take CERB. But if you are working full time, you're going to get around 30,000 per year. And that's around 2,500 per month. So
I will
you are
say,
getting more for full time work at minimum wage because we have such high minimum wage in this province. But that is if you're working full time, and not many people were when we first shut down because of all the cuts and everything else that was going on.
like, I am an essential worker, so where I work, they were really nice, and because we were working during a pandemic, they raised our wages from 15 to 17. So I don't know. But yeah, it was like they're really taking care of us, and I'm really fortunate because they even ordered like special masks for all of us and
Yeah.
hand sanitizer. But it's been pretty scary being an essential worker because there's some customers who don't care about it. And if you're working in retail, like me and Abdi always talk about, when you work where we're working, it feels like there's no pandemic and you forget because people just come into the
Yeah.
space. People are coughing like a weird cough, and I let's like stare at them. Like my associates, we just like make fun that we try to like spray the air with Lysol because like why do you come and they like touch my hand, they cough on their hand. I see them cough on their hand and then they touch me. Like
See, people just want to make fun of it. People don't want to take the coronavirus seriously, and they view it as a political issue. And that's been the biggest issue we've had, is that people have viewed it as something political, even though it isn't. It's health. Health is not political. They should not intersect in this way.
so how do you feel, Dylan, about this is a new term that, well, it's been a term before the pandemic, but a lot of these cases of Karens coming out in videos has been really big during coronavirus because there's been a lot of Karens, like the term Karen, not actually Karens, because I know there's some Karens out there that like I've seen them crying because they don't want to be associated with that name, but they're yelling at in like different stores about not wanting to wear masks because it's their right. You see those citizens going to town hall meetings, yelling and saying that we're communists, that they're trying to take away rights, that we're gonna die because we're breathing our own carbon monoxide in. And to be honest, at first when like I was thinking about it, like at the beginning, I was like, yeah, we are breathing in our own like, you know, air, and that might be bad. But there recently was a doctor who disproved that, showing like the oxygen levels while having his mask, and his oxygen levels did not lower at all.
No, no, not at all. There's still space. It's not like these are airtight masks and you can't breathe through them at all. Like you can still get some air. So I don't understand how people view it as being bad for their health. Look at people who are working class, working in industries, in factories. They wear really tight masks all day, and you don't see them complaining about that. You don't see long-term effects from that. So I don't understand why a surgical mask or even a cloth mask would have an impact like that. Also, think about people in hospitals. Dentists, they wear surgical masks all the time, all day, not just because of coronavirus. So for
Yeah.
anyone to argue that, it's just ridiculous because we see that in so many different industries, people wearing masks to protect themselves from so many different things and to protect their patients as well.
So recently in Calgary, our numbers were going down because honestly, we were taking really good precautions at first. Then we kind of slacked because we thought things were getting better. And guess what?
Yeah.
The cases increased in the span of 2 days. In Calgary specifically, we have about half of the cases, having 589 cases, active cases here. And the scary thing
Mm-hmm.
is that more than like almost half of the cases of people getting it are actually between the ages of 20 and 29. So people who are, you know, young adults thinking that it's not going to happen to them, it's only happening to older people. Here's a reality check. It's actually starting to affect our generation now, which is really
Yeah.
scary. And Calgary recently just came out saying, not Calgary, but you know, in Calgary, we're going to actually have to start wearing masks. It's going to be mandatory in all indoor spaces, including malls, grocery stores, and some transit. And I, as an essential worker, am trying to prepare myself mentally to get into arguments with customers because Dylan, you already know that they did a news story. Global shout out did a news story on
Yeah.
my I don't know if I want to say where I work, but where I work, they did a specific well, they did a specific news story because someone was complaining about not being able to return their dirt. So you can only imagine how much I'm going to have to deal with making people wear masks because people don't like to be told what to do.
They don't. No, that's why it's been viewed as a political issue because people think that when you're being told what to do, it makes you a communist or a socialist or something. It's not. That's just what a good government does in a crisis. You have to have really tight guidelines to make sure that it doesn't get worse. And we've seen countries that have taken precautions early enough. They've handled this beautifully. But then some countries, like the United States, who have yet to find a national plan, they have just never been able to figure it out. And that's about leadership. And in Calgary, the fact that we're going to have mandatory masks, that is great leadership from Mayor Nenshi. That is one of the best things he's done throughout this whole pandemic. He's done a pretty good job. Even though we had pretty high numbers here, I have to commend him for the effort because he has really taken this seriously since the middle of March.
Yeah. I don't know recently, Dylan, if you saw the video of an ex-UFC employee. He was the he was working for the UFC Dinos. Did you see what happened?
I
Basically
did not.
he was riding a bike, and this couple, they're just filming them. This is in Calgary, by the way, Dylan.
Yeah.
They're on a skateboard, and he is riding the bike, going past them like opposite ways, and he spits on them and says, "You effing C word," derogatory C word for someone who's Asian. And apparently he had been doing that to a lot of people, and like also white people, but like saying different derogatory things to different people. And it's seeming like he's just mad that people are wearing masks. I'm not really sure, but he is getting in trouble for that. But it's crazy that that's happening in Calgary. I know that racism does happen in Calgary, but in terms of like even spitting on people, I just didn't think that we're at that level, because it's kind of like United States level. You see those things happening in the United States, and then you're like, that doesn't happen here. Like obviously there's things that happen that are really bad here, but it's really crazy what's happening in the United States in terms of like people going out on the beaches and just like sharing water, and like if they die, they die. They're like, if God wants to take me, but like you just never think it's gonna happen here, you know? What do
Yeah.
you think about
And
that?
well, 100%. We cannot be like the United States. You look at them on Memorial Day weekend, which was near the end of May. Everybody was just hanging on the beaches, acting like it was a good, normal time. And then by the time the middle of June comes, you start to see the cases going up. It's not a coincidence. It's following these massive gatherings that you're seeing on the long weekend. And 3 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago, was July 4th. And the cases tend to go up between 2 and 3 weeks. So I'm just hoping we're not going to see another big influx in the United States because of the massive gatherings that we've seen on Independence Day. And here in Canada, I think we have done a better job, like you said, but there are still people who do not take this seriously. And that is something we cannot have as we go into the school year and as we move towards the winter, when we're going to have the flu as well. And that could be very bad when we have the tandem of both the coronavirus and the flu going around at the exact same time. That could end up very badly for us. So we have to make sure that we stay diligent and we continue to take it seriously throughout the rest of the summer and through the fall.
It's really scary because coronavirus has really similar symptoms to just normal things. So in April, I just get chronic headaches. Just me, but I had started getting headache, and I was starting, like, I have asthma too. So also like there was a change in temperature, and sometimes it flares out for me, like being hard to breathe because I'm a pollen. I'm not specifically, but anyways, I started getting these symptoms, and I was like, oh my God, these are symptoms of coronavirus. And of course, like at the time, and still, we don't know that much because there's people who are asymptomatic and they have coronavirus and they give it to other people. So that's a scary thing too. So like you could have these symptoms. It might not be coronavirus, but some people they take the chance and some people don't take the chance. And that was me.
Yeah.
Because at the time you couldn't get tested unless you have a fever, which I'm really happy about what Alberta is doing in Calgary right now, that if you have any symptoms, you can just go in a walk-in clinic right now and they'll test you right now and they'll give you results in like 3 days.
Yeah.
So
they'll test
big props
anybody,
to
which is great.
our healthcare workers. I really love you guys. Thank you for putting yourself on the line. But going back to it being scary that has similar symptoms is in the fall, we have flu season in general, with dry coughs because it gets colder, with headaches because there's a change in temperature. I'm a bit scared, and it's just, I think it is a good idea to stay closed in fall in terms of like university students as well.
Yes.
I don't know. It's just, some people might not want to wear masks, and I don't want to be around you, and I'm going to be stressed out the whole entire time.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
happy with not going back in the fall, but yeah.
And when you mention dry cough because it's cold, every time I go outside in the winter, I'm coughing away because it's so dry in the, I
Oh
get
yeah,
really
it's
dry. My
dry
hands get
here.
dry. My throat gets
It's dry in
dry.
Calgary.
It's just really dry in this province. And like, that could have such a big impact to somebody who sees me thinking I have coronavirus, even though I know I don't. So it
Actually,
doesn't really make
funny.
sense for us to get into large gatherings because people are just going to get terrified of each other when they see coughing. And sometimes it's for a good reason, and a lot of times it won't be. So it's just really strange.
You are watching a Society of Broadcasting production. Stay tuned for more.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to talking about social justice. But a quick note, Amber has changed places in her house.
Because
And
it was getting darker if you didn't notice in the back. And like me and Dylan were talking about, Calgary is so big that it could be raining over here and be so sunny where Dylan is because
yeah,
I don't trust the weather network now. But it's not like against them, it's just Calgary.
yeah, it's just Calgary's too big. When you put Calgary on a map, it's so large, you can't say it's going to rain in Calgary because odds are it's only going to rain in part of Calgary. Like when we had that
No.
tornado warning probably 3 weeks back, I didn't even get any rain at my house. I could
Really?
see the storm clouds in the far distance, but never even got any rain. And I'm in the north side of the city, and it was coming from Airdrie, so it's crazy
Oh, really?
how I never even got
Because
any
I saw
rain or
it.
anything.
I saw the
I
clouds. It
could
would like
see the
look like a tunnel and
clouds.
it started raining here.
Yeah, we never got the rain. It stopped, you know, in the kind of middle part of the north. I'm basically downtown, so pretty far down
I feel like
south
you're
in the northern region.
I feel like you're always safe, like more center against tornadoes because there's not that like it's not really flat. Like Airdrie has a lot of like flat land, so like the tornadoes comes.
Yeah. The worst thing about a tornado, if you were in downtown, for example, would be the buildings. It wouldn't be you getting hit by the tornado directly. It would be the buildings getting hit by the tornado and those buildings falling down. Like, could you just imagine if a skyscraper got hit by a tornado and got impacted by it?
Yeah, and
That could
Calgary's
impact
really
such a large chunk of the
and like
city.
Calgary's trying to
Yeah.
like up their game in the architecture in downtown, which they have been. We have a lot of beautiful buildings now, but that would be
Oh,
really
yeah.
awful if we
But
just destroyed by a tornado. That usually doesn't happen in Calgary. That would literally
no.
be the icing on top of the cake of 2020 about like all the horrible things that's happened this year, which
Something
let's
else will
talk
happen.
about. Yeah. So, if you didn't know, in May, an African American by the name of George Floyd, unfortunately, he died because in the hands of a police officer who was kneeling on his neck, and he had said multiple times that he couldn't breathe, and he proceeded to be on his neck for 8 minutes and about 46 seconds, and he passed away, unfortunately. Now, this caused a lot of commotion, obviously, because it wasn't right. Why would you keep your he wasn't trying to leave, it just put him in the cop car. And obviously there's a lot of injustice that happen to minorities, specifically African Americans in the United States. They're disproportionately um, treated badly, and so there's been a lot of protests in a lot of states, actually in a lot of countries. We even had a protest here in Calgary, which was good to see, but I did not go because I was too afraid of coronavirus, unfortunately. Um, but there's still protests happening right now. They're very polarizing. It is left and right again. The movement right now is the Black Lives Matter movement, which is then argued with All Lives Matter, which I want to hear your opinion on that, Dylan.
Well, here's the thing. I don't agree. I'll just preface this by saying I don't agree with all lives matter. But here's the thing. All lives do matter, but that's not what this is about. This is about injustice against minorities and specifically black people in the United States and in other countries in the world. That's what this is about. We're not arguing for fairer treatment against white people towards white people we already have it pretty good. Yes, all lives do matter, and eventually, maybe we'll get to that point where everyone's treated equally, and then we can have everybody getting treated even better, and then all lives will matter. But before that happens, everybody needs to be treated equally, and that's why Black Lives Matter is
Wow,
obviously a
Dylan.
sentiment that is spread across
That's
North
so
America.
good. That's really good. I feel like a lot of people who believe in all lives matter, who say that, they're
Yeah.
not really educated on what it actually means about Black Lives Matter, because we're not saying only Black Lives
Well,
Matter. And I
right.
always reference this picture I saw that was saying if there's a disaster in Texas, tornadoes or hurricanes, or
Yeah.
there's something happening in a different part of the world, you say, pray for Ecuador, pray for Texas. People aren't like,
Yeah.
no, 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 don't pray for Texas, or pray for all countries. And it was
Yeah.
actually funny to see, because on Donald Trump's birthday, everyone's like, all birthdays matter. No,
Yeah.
because that's essentially what everyone's saying. We're not saying that only that person's birthday matter, but it's their birthday, so we're going to say happy birthday. And right now, we're saying that these people need to be treated equally, and we need to highlight how things have been going on in the world, and their mistreatment, not that their lives mean more. Their lives mean, and we need to highlight that they equally mean something to everyone. But it's ridiculous to see the counter protests of people, and even um, in Portland, like you're seeing right now, Donald Trump is making military people going to take random protesters without saying anything. At first, I read that it was Homeland Security, and I was like,
It
okay,
was.
Homeland Security, like when I watch, shows, are always going after people who are really dangerous, and like they know something that no one else knows. So I was like, oh, maybe that's happening. But if you further read into what happened, that specific video that I saw of the person, he was just like walking down the street, and all of a sudden in an unidentified van, it wasn't even like a van that you see like that people are like listening into. It was like a soccer mom minivan that they got out of, that didn't like wasn't identified. They got out and they just took him in a van, and he ended up being released. So then that makes me believe, okay, then obviously he wasn't actually a threat, so why would they just take him away without even saying anything? And in the video, the people are like, you can speak, like say like who you are, why are you taking him, like, and that starts to get a bit scary. And to be honest, if people are scared to wear masks and saying that we're taking away their rights, and that's becoming communism, like a communist state, then they should really fear military personnel coming and taking you without telling you why. That's really scary.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you mention that it's Homeland Security, which it is, it's also an agency within Homeland Security, which is the CBP, Customs and Border Protection. I
Yeah.
got no idea why Customs and Border Protection are in there dealing with this issue. It makes absolutely zero sense. Like some parts of Homeland Security, sure, but Customs and Border Protection? How? Why are they in Oregon in the streets? It doesn't make any sense at all. I don't get it.
When I read that part, I'm like rereading it. I'm like, it says border
Yeah.
security. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't understand what they mean by that and why they're
Yeah.
doing that. And what I've been reading is, even though they're doing that, the protesters aren't backing down, which is all power to them. But I'd be really scared, because honestly, they're doing things, and Donald Trump is allowing them to do things right now that seem like it's the beginning of a dystopian movie, that there's going to be a civil war. At
Yeah,
one
I
point, I
know.
did feel like there was going to be a civil war. Um, I do remember reading about some police officers being caught on camera, like because they have body cameras, talking about how they want there to be a civil war so they can just shoot the people they want, so they can stop protesting. And I was like, I know that there's like
Because
bad apples with police officers, but there's also bad apples with protesters. But at the same time, I agree with the defund the police. I don't agree with abolish the police. Um, because I'm more on the side that if you invest in more social programs that help people, there'd be less crime, and you wouldn't put all of the onus on police officers if you put it more on funding with um, rehab centers, mental health services, um, social service in terms of childcare. There would be less problems, and like the solution isn't always just incarcerate people, and there's a really big problem with incarceration rates in the United States anyways. So when I say that I agree with defund the police, that's what I'm coming from. I don't completely agree with abolishing the police. And in terms of abolishing the police, I do think that some people mean that like they need to completely just abolish that system to create a different system. But I think that that would be really, really, really hard. So for me, the balance would be defunding the police. What do you think, Dylan?
Well, the system isn't great, but it obviously has problems that need to be fixed. I wouldn't defund. What I would do instead, and this is something you'll see from Joe Biden's campaign actually, is increasing the funding in order to have increased background checks and improvement in who the law enforcement officers are. So, making sure that they are better apples and you don't have as many bad apples that spoil the bunch. So I would increase the funding towards different aspects, not increase the police force, but increase the money that you are putting into the police force in order to make the police force better and to have better people, better training, better mental health programs for police officers themselves to make sure that you don't have bad apples in the mix.
The thing is, like with defunding, like I know a lot of people associate just taking away money and they're gonna have to find money on their own. It's more like they already
No,
have a lot of money,
oh yeah,
so they could give some of that money to different services that need it. And what a lot of people are thinking about, and I think it was in San Francisco specifically, but they were saying there's thing called wellness checks. So if someone is being erratic, if someone's going through an episode, instead of calling the police, which they regularly did, and a lot of times when the police were called in, they don't know how to deal with those situations, so they end up shooting the person, even though they're going through a manic episode they don't understand. Um,
yeah.
that actually happened here in Canada with a BC university student, was it? Or it was a BC woman, where the police officer just dragged her from her apartment complex and even like hit her head down on the floor when it was supposed to be a wellness check. So a lot of people are saying like, okay, and also defunding police, we're going to fund maybe psychologists, therapists, or people who are trained to do wellness checks to do that instead of police officers. So when you call 911, they won't dispatch a police officer; they'll dispatch that psychologist to go de-escalate the situation.
Yeah, I do agree that the current police force isn't equipped to handle situations like that, and that's part of why I say increase their funding so that you have enhanced training in those aspects of policing, where you train them to be prepared for those aspects of it. I think that's the best way to go for me. If you have too many people that are considered authorities, then it could get a little bit complicated. So I think the best situation to go with is to have the police force be the ones coming in as long as they are trained better in those areas.
Well, we don't have this problem specifically in Canada, but like in the United States, I read that it was sometimes it's really easy to become a police officer. The training
Right.
isn't that long. They can just become a police officer in a matter of a few months.
Right.
So that
That's what I'm advocating for is harder training. That's why more money is necessary to improve their training methods.
But what did they have like? Because becoming a police officer is a chosen career choice. So right now we're trying to be broadcasters, so we're paying for our education. Shouldn't those people like just them creating programs that are longer? Shouldn't they also like make those students pay for that so that we wouldn't have to pay? And like, well, not we because we don't live in the United States, but you know what I mean. Um,
Yeah, I think
and
so,
then
but it would take time to move into that because people who are already enrolled, I'm not exactly sure how long police training lasts for, but people who are already enrolled, people who have already applied, it's not fair to raise their fees. So it's
yeah.
necessary right now to give them more money in the short term in order to allow them to afford better training methods over the next couple of years. And then as time goes on, you can balance it out. You can lower it back down as people are able to start paying more.
In terms of actually, you talking about having too many heads of authority.
Yeah.
For the wellness check people, it wouldn't be that they're more of authority. It's more like, oh, you have a firefighter because there's a house burning. You have a police officer because someone's shooting. But then someone is
Yeah.
having like a situation where there's distress. They're gonna have psychologists. So it's not like they're fighting for power. It's just different people helping for different reasons.
But what if that is a difficult situation that the psychologist is going into? What if this person does have a gun? What if this person is dangerous and violent? Obviously, in most cases, they won't be, but there will be some where they are. So the psychologist would then have to be trained in that area as well. So you'd have to add to that training budget.
Yeah, and that is true. They would definitely have to have backup, maybe even just bringing tasers just in case, because who knows could happen. But I wouldn't
Right.
necessarily think that those people would be above police officers. But police officers themselves are not above the law. So
No,
the
no, they're
highest
not.
person is our judges, which recently, I don't know if you saw, there was a judge who was appointed to the Epstein case, and her son opened the door for a FedEx associate,
Yeah.
and he ended up killing her son and shooting her. So it's really scary right now in terms of the justice system as well. It seems like it's really not. It's really, the more you know about things in terms of videos coming out that we didn't know were out, and what if it wasn't filmed, we would have never known that
Yeah.
they did something wrong. And a lot of times you hear the police officers not feeling remorseful, which is very crazy to me. And these things happening, it just showing me that it's not a clean system, and it's not for the people. It's more like of an oppressive system, really.
It really is, and that's why it's not just the police force that needs change. It is the entire justice system. It goes all the way up to the DOJ. Changes need to be made from the very top, and we'll see if that happens. I would say we're not going to see much over the next 6 months or so, because right now there is no national plan for any of the major issues going on in the United States. But after that, assuming Donald Trump does lose, I think there likely will be change in the immediate future.
Let's talk about that, Dylan. Assuming that Donald Trump's going to lose, do you think he's going to lose?
I do think he's going to lose.
You think he's going to lose?
I mean, I do think he's going to lose. I thought he was going to win for a lot of his presidency, but since the coronavirus, we've seen a big dip in his polling numbers. Since the social justice controversies going on in the United States, we've seen another big dip in his polling numbers. And overall, he just hasn't created a national plan for any of these issues. He's starting to get somewhere when it comes to coronavirus, where he's taking it seriously. I'm not sure how his press conference that's on right now is going, but I mean, you look at yesterday's press conference, it was a different Donald Trump. He was a lot more on point and on message, and he had a script. He was reading from the teleprompter. That's what you need to be when you're in a crisis. He was acting pretty presidential, other than a couple of missteps. There was some mistakes, as you'd expect, but overall, he was acting pretty presidential.
In terms of like Donald Trump, like, and how he is handling the situation right now, I don't know if you heard, but he just made it illegal for hospitals and to share stats about the outbreaks of coronavirus. It has to go directly to the White House first, and that also seems really like extremist. When people talk about communism, I just really get confused that they don't forget that there's extreme side on the right side as well. So just as much as people should be scared of communism, they should be scared of fascism. And him taking information and him being able to be like, you're not allowed to release it unless I want to. And he could also just change the numbers if he wanted to. It's not, it doesn't seem like a democracy anymore. it seems like an
No,
authoritative regime, including the thing about him sending military personnel to take protesters without identifying themselves.
yeah, and jump back to that really quickly. It's not just Portland anymore. It's other places, Chicago and Albuquerque as well, where he is sending federal troops. And I mean, that's just another example where he and the rest of the Trump administration and the higher ups in the federal government right now, they are abusing their power. They really are. And again, back to the coronavirus, like you were saying, again, bypassing the CDC on numbers is just not right. And I cannot believe that they're doing that, especially when they have lacked transparency through the entirety of this crisis. You know, if they had a good track record since March, maybe it would be fine, but they don't. They have been horrible since March, and the White House is not giving medical authorities the ability to really get their point across, not inviting people like Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx to the press conferences as well. So it's just not a good situation right now in the United States because they don't have good, strong leadership, and that starts at the White House.
There is no strong leadership. And speaking of that, we're in our next segment, we're going to be talking about the general election. So stay tuned for that.
You are currently listening to Destroying Walls, which is an SOB production. Stay tuned for the rest of the show.
Okay, now let's move on to a segment about the general election. So, as you guys all know, 4 years ago, Trump won the election over Hillary Clinton, and he was down a little bit in the polls. He wasn't down a huge amount, but he was down a little bit, so it was a surprise when he won that election. But this time around, against Joe Biden, the former vice president for Barack Obama, Trump is down massive amounts of numbers. You look at some of the recent polls we're seeing, the real clear politics average, they have him up by around Biden up by around 8.4 points. A CNN poll of polls, which looked at 5 different polls and took the averages, has him up by 12 points. I mean, this is as good of a situation as you could possibly have for Joe Biden. He's doing fantastic in the Rust Belt area. States like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, which Trump all won in 2016, are all looking like states that Joe Biden is going to take fairly handily this time around. A state like Arizona, which has been a fairly red state over the years, that's a state where Biden's in a good position. Florida is really tight, but Biden has the edge there. North Carolina is reasonably tight. Biden has the edge there. So in all of these states that we considered battlegrounds coming into 2020, Biden has the edge in all 6 of those battleground states. And then on top of that, you have states like Texas and Georgia and even Ohio that are really, really close. And even the most recent poll coming from Quinnipiac University, they have Texas in favor of Joe Biden by 1 point, which is just absolutely insane. Like, do you think Trump has a chance to win re-election this year, Amber?
When I was reading the stats, it said that if a president won their first election, it was really, there was high chances of him winning the second election.
Yes.
And it seemed like he had a lot of supporters still, to be honest, until the pandemic struck. And then they obviously all saw, oh, wow, Donald Trump is so not fit to be the leader of our country, has no clue what to do. And he's very selfish in the decisions that he makes. I'm pretty sure it wasn't specifically him, but a Republican said, like, there's people that's gonna die, and they are gonna die for their country because the economy needs to do better. And it's just priorities, man. Like, if the healthcare system wasn't so bad, not that many people would be dying. It's just there's not enough beds for people. There's not enough what was the respirators at one point. Donald Trump
Ventilators, yeah.
Ventilators, yeah. At one point, Donald Trump wanted to block Canada from getting ventilators.
Yeah.
He wanted to open the border up with us, and Justin Trudeau was like, "No, thank you."
Yeah.
It is just crazy. I knew that a lot of people didn't like Biden, because there's this new wave of some people call millennials, but some people call Gen Z, depending on what article you read, we're Gen Z
Yeah.
or millennials. But
Yeah.
where we're reading a lot and we're realizing, Republicans and Democrats, they both have a lot of skeletons in their closet, and a lot of people our age are now calling themselves progressives, not even one or the other. They're progressive. And we love Bernie, but unfortunately, the older generations don't like Bernie because Bernie seems too progressive, too communist for their liking. AOC is someone I really look up to, but again, a lot of people just think they're too polarizing. So unfortunately, Bernie didn't win. So when Biden came in, it was like, okay, it's kind of a lot of young people didn't really trust Biden for a lot of things he did in the past. And now they're realizing, okay, we have to vote for Biden or else we're going to get Donald Trump again. Like, there's no other option. Until Kanye West. Kanye West said he's an option, guys. Actually, don't. I'm not promoting him. Don't vote for him. I'm not joking. That would be a
No,
joke, and I would be
don't vote.
so angry. Yeah.
Well, people are only going to vote for him just because they're like, why not? It's funny. People will vote for Kanye for that reason, and you shouldn't vote for that reason. But, I want to jump back really quickly to what you were saying about Biden not being like that much. And that's true. I mean, over 60% of people who said they were voting for Joe Biden were doing it because he's not Trump. It wasn't because they like Joe Biden. They were voting for Biden because they don't like Donald Trump. And that just shows where the US is right now. It's kind of similar to 2016 in a way, where neither of the options are viewed as super favorable. So you got to go with the guy who you don't view as being as bad as the other one. And back in 2016, Hillary Clinton had a lot of skeletons in her closet in public office. Trump had a lot of skeletons in his closet, but in the private world. So that wasn't viewed as poorly as Hillary Clinton making mistakes in public office. And now it's the other way around, where Trump has a lot of mistakes that he's made in public office, and Joe has some, but overall, Trump's mistakes are far worse than what we've seen from Joe Biden, at least in recent memory. And then you look at the coronavirus and the fact that that is the most important issue to Americans in this coming election. And Trump's approval rating on his handling of the virus is in the 30%. So it's just a really bad situation for Trump. And you also have to look at the fact that obviously the H1N1 pandemic and the Ebola outbreak, those aren't on the same level as the coronavirus outbreak, but Biden was vice president for those, and he was involved in handling those properly. So he has a lot of things going in his favor right now, even if he's not that well liked, he's got a lot of things that are starting to move in his favor compared to Donald Trump.
Well, so it came out that Donald Trump was warned about the coronavirus and said, you need to start implementing precautions so that it doesn't get bad. And he ignored it. And because of that, there's people who died. And honestly, if I was in his position, I would feel really guilty because I am dealing with people's lives and I'm putting the economy before. Like, you're supposed to be representing the people, and that's not what he's doing. He's just putting his own interest in front of the people's. And you know what? His niece just came out with a tell-all book that's not making him look too good, and he himself seems upset about the book. Like, reporters tried to ask him about it, he ignored it. The niece herself said Donald Trump is a narcissist. He only does things for himself and not for the people, and he is racist, which, like, there's nothing surprising there. And on the other side, when we're talking about Joe Biden, I think that a lot of people were also hesitant because it was weird that Obama wasn't directly promoting him from the start. And he had promoted Justin Trudeau, which was Canadian politics, but he wasn't willing to promote Joe Biden. So it's like he was your vice president. So it's good now, though, because Obama is advocating for Joe Biden now. Obviously, because Donald Trump must be stopped. But in this pandemic, in this crazy pandemic with so many things happening, which is going to be in the history books, like pandemic, Black Lives Matter movement. Also, like there was this group called Anonymous. They were like the hackers. Have you heard about them?
I have not. No.
They came out with these allegations, and there was pictures of, not Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and they were all friends. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton,
Yeah.
Donald Trump, and
Yeah.
Epstein. So it
Yeah.
seems like weird things were happening there too. So it's just
Yeah.
Donald Trump's, like, because Joe Biden's not in those pictures. Joe Biden doesn't have those type of skeletons, but Donald Trump, it just keeps coming out, and there are some people who are still supporting him. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
I actually don't know why, because there are some people who are working class who used to really love him because they thought that the economy was doing so well, but right now,
Right.
the unemployment rate is really high, and I understand because coronavirus like really hit hard, but it's not like he's helping at all.
No, and that's the thing. I can understand if someone in 2016, before Trump got into office, they didn't have a job, they were doing horrible economically, and then at the start of 2020, they're better off than they were now. Well, wouldn't you vote for Donald Trump again if you're one of those people who is doing better now than they were before Trump? It just feels like the right decision to make. But now that's just not the case for really any Americans. Almost everybody is worse off economically now than they were at the beginning of 2020. So I don't understand the surplus for voting for Donald Trump at this point. There used to be one. It was the economy. He continued the strong increase and improvement in the economy that we started to see after the Great Recession in 2009. And we seen improvements, and it was improving steadily and continuing to happen under Donald Trump's leadership. But now with the economy in the toilet, there is no reason to really vote for Donald Trump. That was his biggest claim to success in his presidency. And now with that gone, I don't see how he can win unless the economy somehow rises to incredible levels by the time the election comes and a vaccine is made for coronavirus very quickly. There are some companies that are saying they could have one by September. If that happens, Trump starts to look smart when he's saying, oh, it's going to disappear and we're going to find a vaccine and we're going to distribute it to hundreds of millions by the end of the year. If that stuff happens, Trump may have a chance. But based on what we have right now and based on the polling data that we have at the moment, Trump is going to get wiped out in this election. He is going to lose every single battleground state. He is probably going to lose at least one or two of Georgia, Iowa, Texas, and Ohio, which are states that should be firmly Republican. He's not even going to be in the mix in Minnesota. He was just over a point behind Hillary there in 2016. The lead is in double digits now for Joe Biden. It's just such a bad situation for Donald Trump.
Really?
Yeah, it's bad. And same with Florida, a state he won, he's down by a few points. A state like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, states he won, he's around double digits down, depending on the poll that you're looking at. It is insane how much he's down right now. And he's down more than the margin of error in most of these states as well, which
really?
just makes it so much more worse for Trump and his reelection chances.
Okay, well, going back to the candidates, I kind of want to go back to your reaction to Kanye West running for president and having a chance. I don't even know if we should talk about this as a joke or being serious, because honestly, it's really weird.
I mean, when he first announced it, I thought it was a joke, but then I believe it was a few days later, the middle of that week, he did a big interview with Forbes, where he outlined some policies, and he really did seem serious about it. Then I started to think maybe it is. And then less than a week ago, you've seen that he is going to be on the ballot in Oklahoma. So it's like, okay, he actually is running, even if he's not running in every state, and he won't be because he joined the race way too late, and he didn't get the signatures required in certain states. He is there, and he is going to be on the ballot in some states, and in most states you can write his name in. But come on, to anyone who thinks this guy has a chance, there is no way Kanye West has a chance in this election. There are certain states where there are a lot of Republicans, and maybe the Republicans or just overall conservative voters might say, I'm not voting for Trump. Kanye is a right-wing option. I'm going to vote for him. But I think even in that scenario, they'll probably go with the libertarian candidate as well, or instead of Kanye West. So it really is a tough battle for him to win even a single state. But if Trump does close the gap on Joe Biden, and there are a couple of states that Kanye can somehow win, I'm not saying this is going to happen. This is just all insane talk. If he could win a couple states, there's a chance nobody could get to 270 electoral votes. Then it comes down to the House of Representatives and the Senate to decide the president and VP respectively. So I feel like that's what he's hoping to do. I don't think he really wants to win if he is serious. And now he's talking about possibly pushing back his campaign to 2024. But if he is serious, I don't think he's hoping to win outright. I think he's hoping to, somehow squeak out one or two states and hope for the best, even though it's not going to happen.
So it's interesting to me that you're saying that it might take Republican votes, but from what I was reading, a lot of young people, like, they're like, do not vote for Kanye West instead of Joe Biden, because they say that the conspiracy is that he's running so that Donald Trump wins again, so that people who are between Joe Biden and Donald Trump will go for Kanye West, and some just do as a joke, and then Donald Trump wins again. He also, his party, he wants to call it, is birthday party, because it's going to be like a birthday party when he wins. I honestly hope the best for him, because honestly, he seems mentally ill, and this is really embarrassing. When he first came out saying that he was running for president, which came up in my mind when Donald Trump was coming for president, because I don't know if you remember the story, Dylan, but I knew Donald Trump from Celebrity Apprentice. So I saw Donald Trump on TV, and he always thought he's a big shot. Like, you're fired. And then he became president, and he didn't have any political background. And I'm Kanye West. I always said, when I talk to people, I'm like, honestly, if Kanye West really did care, then he should have started dabbling in politics before, starting to gain more knowledge. If he really did care, like maybe starting an organization, I don't know, following someone who is already running for president, or even backing a party, reading more, even becoming a senator before, something just that you put your feet in and you're starting to understand, because it's, being a president isn't just a game. It's not like, it just is making a mockery of the leadership of the United States. It's like a joke. Like, it's making me not take the election seriously if he's running, because that means that anyone could run. And I guess anyone could run, but if he actually got votes, then I'm like, wow. Many people need to really think about I know a lot of people don't believe that voting actually makes a difference and that their voice doesn't count, but it does. And him running for president reminded me of a scholarly article we read in Richard's class by Neil Postman about amusing ourselves to death, where people won't necessarily actually pick the best presidential candidate, but the better one looking, like, on paper. If he is better at talking, if he just looks better, he just is the image, and he is funnier, he's more of a people person, they will vote for him instead of the actual person who has the right policies. And so that's when I was like, and in that little excerpt of Amusing Ourselves to Death, he said one day a celebrity could become president because people are just so, they put their entertainment and their pleasure in front of everything else. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like Kanye West and Donald Trump, because Donald Trump to me is still, like, honestly, he also wasn't in politics. He's a rich man who, he was born into that, he didn't actually either try to dabble in politics before, he just jumped right into it. So again, I'm like, wow, he prophesized what is really happening right now, that we really care about amusing. And honestly, when we were talking about our own Canadian politics with Justin Trudeau and our federal elections, which became a joke to me because they were just arguing, like catty arguing, instead of actually talking about politics.
Yeah, the debate was terrible.
But it's happening now in the United
Yeah.
States. It's like a mockery again. I'm like, this is like not a joke because people's lives are at stake.
Yeah, obviously, comparison between Kanye and Trump is a good comparison because there is no background in politics, no real background in politics for either of them. But the thing about Trump is, at least he had teased running for president for 30 years almost. At least he tried to run for the reform nomination in 2000. Like, he had dabbled a little. Kanye West dabbled or nothing. He's just, hey, I'm going to run, see what happens. I know he had teased it a few
Yeah, I
years
was about
back,
to say
but
he
that was just a
teased it a
few
little
years
bit.
ago, and it was always seen as a joke. Where when Trump was teasing it, it wasn't necessarily seen as a joke because he was far more serious about it, and he said that he would run if it got so bad that he had no choice. And ultimately, he decided once Barack Obama was president and when Hillary had a good chance of being the president, he decided that was when he had no choice, and he ran. It was something that he had prepped for nearly 30 years. Whereas Kanye, it's kind of like it's been definitely on the back burner if he's even been thinking about it. So obviously they're both celebrities, both don't have a background, but I'd say Kanye is even worse because there is zero background. Because Trump at least tried to run 20 years ago for the reform nomination unsuccessfully.
Yeah, I think that Kanye West right now, I don't know if you saw the news, but he's just tweeting out a lot of weird things, and I'm not gonna say that he's weird, but like I also think that he needs to take care of himself before he takes care of a whole country.
Yeah.
He needs to take care of his family and his well-being. It's just a no for me with Kanye West and people making jokes that they're going to, or people, because honestly, Kanye does have a loyal following, and there are
I
some
know he
people
does.
that will do anything, even buying his Polly Pocket shoes. Have you seen those shoes? They look like Polly Pocket shoes.
I have not,
They will
no.
buy those shoes. And do you remember that tale when you were little of that person? He was like rich, and then all of a sudden this tailor came and was like, I'm gonna make you a dress, but there was no dress. And so he walked down the streets naked, and people were like, oh, I really love it, but it wasn't anything. Like, he wasn't wearing anything, but because everyone just like wanted to follow the trend, they were like, yeah, it's like great, but he was naked. I just feel
Yeah.
like that's happening. Like, they're just following a trend. It's he's not serious. Do not vote for him. That is ridiculous. And
No, please don't vote for Kanye, please. I mean, people are going to complain about Trump and how that was a mistake. Kanye would be a bigger mistake. Do not vote for Kanye. At least Trump seemed mentally stable at the beginning of his presidency. I mean, we've seen him start to deteriorate mentally a little bit. If you watch his speech
yeah.
from 2015 compared to now, he was so much more coherent back then than he is now. But to elect Kanye West, who already is showing signs of mental illness, it's just not a good move right now, especially
Well,
with two major crises happening right now in the country.
true. I think that one of the reasons why he did actually end up running for presidency was because of the movement. He did go out and protest himself, Kanye West, and he was like, I
Yeah.
want to put the power back into our hands. But he said some pretty controversial things in his little speech that didn't even have to do with politics. So I don't think he's doing this for the people. I think
See,
he's doing this for himself. And honestly, there's been more reports about Kanye West and Donald Trump that I read more than Biden. I know like Biden's a bit more, to me, he's been like low key, and he has been like saying things out, but he hasn't had any controversies happen recently, from my knowledge.
right. Well, no, he really has. He had one probably a month and a half ago where he made a bad comment, but other than that, he's been pretty clean.
Oh, was it
And
with Charlemagne the
obviously,
God?
no, it was when I don't know who that is honestly, but the quote was where he said, "If you're voting for Trump, you're not black," something to that
Yeah, that
effect.
was with
That's
Charlemagne the
what he
God.
said.
Yeah.
That was Charlemagne. Okay. So that tweet or that comment, sorry, that was the only mistake he's made. But I think the strategy of the Biden campaign is to just hide Joe Biden as much as you possibly can. He will make mistakes. He's been doing it for 30 years. He's been making mistakes politically and with his words. So you hide him and you let Donald Trump impact his own reelection chances. Donald Trump has been helping Joe Biden with his actions. And Joe Biden knows that, and he's just been kind of sitting on the sidelines, doing his thing, and watching Donald Trump crumble and watching the polls turn in his favor. And it's been a brilliant strategy. It shouldn't be able to work, but it has worked really, really well.
Now, Dylan, before we head out, I want to have one more question. If you could pick anyone that you know to be the president of the United States 2020, who would you pick?
Somebody that I know, or somebody like in
like Pete
politics?
Buttigieg, because I knew that you liked him. Anyone, if
No,
you thought that they're a
I
good
would go.
candidate.
Yeah, I would go with Paul Ryan. He's not in politics anymore. He retired. He used to be the Speaker of the House. He's still quite young though. He was very level-headed, and he's leaning towards the right, but still fairly moderate policies. And I thought he would be a great option. I remember thinking he would run in 2020 if Trump faltered so much. But obviously, Trump didn't really falter until right now, when it was too late for anybody to get in the race. But I think Paul Ryan's a guy who I could see joining the race in 2024 for sure. And that's a guy who I've wanted to run since 2016.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's who I was hoping. That's who I was hoping would run if Trump did deteriorate towards the end of his term, which obviously he has. I was hoping Paul Ryan would be the guy to step in. But really, no major candidate did step in. No one that really had the ability to impact Trump. So, and obviously didn't want to divide the party. I would this year, yeah.
Would you? Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd vote for Biden.
Oh, really?
Again, yeah, I would vote for Biden. I was leaning on the fence about this even like back in September, Amber. Back when the impeachment hadn't even happened, I struggled with this question. Then Trump got impeached. Then coronavirus came, and there's just been so much bad stuff happening around that Trump administration and just extra corruption. Without a doubt, now Joe Biden would have my vote if I was an American.
Well, there you have it, guys.
Especially in a crisis, you need somebody with experience. You need somebody who's level-headed and someone who's not going to try and do anything crazy. And Joe Biden is exactly that. I think he's the right option right now, based on the two that are in the race.
Yeah, I would like to see a woman one day become the president. A qualified woman. I'm not just saying any.
You're going to see. No, yeah. I think your wish could come true in 4 years, because Biden's only going to do one term, and he's going to pick a woman vice president. So, there's a chance there. He's going to pick a female vice president. He already said he would, even before coronavirus. And now he's going to go with a black woman, almost certainly. He's actually narrowed it down, according to reports. He's narrowed down his VP search to 4 black women. So,
Michelle Obama?
Yeah,
I know Michelle Obama and Joe Biden are like besties though, so.
I don't think he would do that, because that would be an option that could backfire pretty hard. He wants to go with the option that ensures he beats Trump. But honestly, the Democratic nominee in 4 years, I'm pretty confident will be a woman, because there are so many rising up to the top of the party. And if Biden doesn't run for a second term, and I don't think he will, the VP will probably be the nomination. There's a chance, pretty good chance in 4 years.
Well, we heard it here first, Dylan. In 4 years, I will call you and let you know a woman president. Like, you told me that there should be, and there's none.
And it's no guarantee. It depends. But based on where the society's going right now, I think the Democrats will have the edge in 4 years, just based on where I think things are going. I think they'll have the edge, and I do think their nominee will be a woman. So it could work out well for them. But again, who knows how Biden's presidency goes? I thought Trump would win this election 4 months ago, but it's just fallen apart for him. So who knows? It's tough to predict, but I do think there is a very good chance of a woman in 4 years.
Well, I gotta say though, the 1920s was around the Great Depression, and right now, everywhere, the Canadian dollar is so bad right now. It is so bad.
It's bad, yeah.
I can't even. I used to like to buy my clothes from American stores, and nope, a shirt that used to be like $20 is almost $30, and it didn't it used to be like $3 or $4 more, but it's like $10 more. It's crazy, and if you go in the hundreds, it's like $30 more. I'm like,
Yeah, it's
Good
bad.
for
We have a
if a-
bad dollar right now.
Americans,
do.
if you want to buy anything, you should buy Canadian things because you'll get a really good deal, honestly.
Yeah.
But don't
You
come
really
here,
should.
just buy online.
Yeah, over the internet. We don't want you
Yeah.
coming here. Not right now.
Not right now, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, thanks, Dylan, for jumping on this call. We're going to be having more guests on. We're going to be trying to get some American guests because we are predominantly politics, American politics.
Yeah.
So
For the
we'll
most
have some
part.
Canadians. Maybe we can like call up Nancy and be like, "What up?" Talk about some things happening in Calgary, but we'll see. So I'm excited to see what guests we'll have.